Though sources conflict on its origins and the awakening of its gods, the forces of chaos have seemingly menaced the galaxy for thousands, if not millions, of years. But the presence of a major threat will always lead to opposition, whether public or covert, and so it has been in the Milky Way as well. This opposition has taken many forms and has been both unified and fragmented dependent on circumstance. But before the rise of humanity to galactic superpower, it was a small group of individuals from many races that seemed to be the backstage influencers in the fight against chaos. Their plans and machinations may have caused the turn of an entire Space Marine Legion, but their power was broken long ago, and it is believed that the group no longer exists. Though little is known of them and their members, we do know the organization's name: the Cabal. This is Tactica Imperialis, and welcome to 40k Stories. As mentioned in the introduction, very little is known of the Cabal in general. Member races, founding dates, all of those useful little bits of historical data that would help us piece together the shape of the galaxy over the millennia. What fragments we do know suggest that the Cabal as a group were around for a long time. In fact, it is believed that their members were fighting against chaos, known to them as the Primordial Annihilator, for longer than humanity has been evolved as a species, which would be several million years at the absolute least. Obviously, that doesn't mean that the Cabal's membership has been constant for millions of years. Empires and species can rise and fall in less time than that, and the records of those things have undoubtedly been lost or archived by a race that may itself have fallen in turn. Even at the time of the Cabal's final chapter, the majority of the races that formed its membership were lost to history. The Eldari were definitely there, so some of them may remember, but it's never been recorded in a location that I can access it. It is thought that some of these races were organic, others mechanical, with some being different again to create a real diversity of origins and organisms that presumably aided the goal of taking on the Primordial Annihilator. It also brought a highly advanced level of technology to the table. Terraforming and atmospheric manipulation seem to be commonly used by the Cabal, and it's believed that they possessed some form of control over life itself as concerns longevity and regeneration. One might suspect, given the believed power of the Cabal, that it would be somewhat easy therefore to find their bases of operations. Highly advanced or modified worlds or systems, maybe some chambers or palaces where the members would meet, so on and so forth. And as it happens, you can do this if you know what you're looking for, but there isn't just one place for you to go. You see, the Cabal, at least in its final days, was a somewhat nomadic organization who would move around the galaxy on occasion, setting up bases on worlds for a time before moving on after a while. This is how you would track the Cabal. Their terraforming operations always went roughly the same way, leaving a uniform landing zone or way station behind that those who knew of the Cabal could use to see where they'd been. Granted, you'd need a very keen eye and probably prior knowledge to be able to do it, but it's certainly a tactic you could try if you were able to learn of their techniques and methodology. However, their gifts with technology are not what the Cabal's members are perhaps best known and remembered for. That honour instead goes to their gifts in the foreseeing arts, known to them as the acuity. What difference this has to standard divination is unclear, but it seems to have been very effective, or at least ambitious, given the prophecies foreseen and the plans that the Cabal would set into motion. We've lost many of these to time, but arguably we only need to know about the probable last one in order to gauge the scope of their machinations. If you manage to find the log on Eldrad Orthran in these archives, you'll know that the Cabal were heavily involved in the setup of the Horus Heresy. This conglomerate of species had decided that the Chaos Gods had invested their power and efforts overwhelmingly into humanity, intending to use them and the Astartes created by the Emperor to conquer and overrun the galaxy. Their vessel for this was to be the Primarch Horus Lupercal in what would become known as the Horus Heresy, who would be corrupted and flipped to the side of chaos by Erebus of the Wordbearers. Now, the Cabal knew of all of this, and they decided that their plan for the Horus Heresy, a galaxy-spanning civil war in humanity's Imperium that could see chaos become a dominant force in the Milky Way, was to let it happen, and in fact influence things so that Horus and chaos would win. You might reasonably be thinking that this sounds insane for a chaos-fighting organization to want chaos to win a massive war and potentially overrun the galaxy under Horus's banner. But if you buy into the effectiveness of the acuity, there was a method to the madness. The projections and foresights of the Cabal predicted the long-term consequences for both outcomes in the Horus Heresy, a loyalist and a traitor victory. The loyalist prediction foretold that the Emperor would be forced to sacrifice his life and become interred on the Golden Throne in order to kill Horus, causing a galactic or at least human stagnation that would lead to millennia of misery and ultimately to a chaos victory by swallowing the galaxy with the warp. As you might be able to tell, this prediction seems to have broadly come to pass. The Emperor ended up on the throne, the Imperium's gone nowhere, its citizens are mostly miserable menials, and now we have the Cicatrix Maledictum as the warp rips into more and more of reality. However, the predictions for a traitor victory in the heresy go very differently. The Cabal believed that whatever remained of the corrupted Horus's humanity would see him turn on his former forces, destroying humanity as a species within a couple of generations, but taking the Chaos Gods with it due to their overly heavy investment. Now, we have no idea if this would actually have come to pass. It seems like a titanic gamble to take, but given the seeming accuracy of their prediction for the Emperor's victory, it bears consideration at least. Imagine if there was no humanity, no chaos. What would the Galactic Order look like? Which species would have become dominant? Which societies would have risen and fallen? And what would the Order be? Whether the Cabal actually cared for any of that is unknown, since the only thing we know of their ethos was the desire to defeat chaos. But they were certainly taking steps to make it happen by influencing the outcome of the heresy. It is believed that the Cabal were the ones to turn the Alpha Legion and the Primarchs Alpharius Omegon to Horus's side, asking them to masquerade as traitors whilst maintaining their loyalty in order to play the long game for the good of all. Why the Alpha Legion, you may ask? Well, aside from their natural duplicity, it was to do with some prophecy about Alpharius being the youngest of the Primarchs, presumably meaning that he was the last found since they were all created about the same time. The actions of Horus, the oldest, the first found, could be undone by the youngest according to the Cabal's logic, and so they flipped the Alpha Legion to the traitor side to ensure their victory and Chaos's fall. Once the heresy was underway, the Cabal continued to try and influence events to subtly engineer a traitor victory. We'll get to the most famous example of this in a moment, but most of it has probably been lost to time as well. However, the organisation would never actually see its plans and goals realised. Obviously the Loyalists won, of course they didn't get it, but I mean instead that the Cabal's members weren't alive by the time of said Loyalist victory. I mentioned Eldrad Ulthran previously, and the Farseer of Ulthwé took it upon himself to eliminate the Cabal, having potentially seen another solution in his own visions and working actively against the Cabal's plans in the heresy. Alongside the word-bearer Barthusa Narek, Eldrad systematically assassinated most if not all of the Cabal's membership, effectively shattering the entire organisation. As of M31 or 2, it is believed that the Cabal no longer existed, at least if Eldrad was to be believed. But they may still have it all in the end, they may still be proven to be correct over the coming millennia. If Chaos ends up winning and the galaxy is swallowed, then the Acuity's visions will have come to pass, even if none of the Cabal will be alive to smirk as the universe dies and say that they told us so. The majority of the Cabal's members down the years have been forgotten, but the tale of one of their more famous agents can give us a measure of insight into both their operations and their methodology. I speak of the human psyker known simply as John Grammaticus, someone who had walked alongside and even spoken briefly with the Emperor. Though his exact origins are unclear, it is almost guaranteed that Grammaticus was Terran-born, possibly from the region once known as the Caucasus, due to being part of a fighting force known as the Caucasian Levies. This force saw action under the Emperor himself against the Pan-Pacific Empire during the Unification Wars, and in the celebration following the victory, Grammaticus actually met the Lord of Mankind. The Emperor planned to meet and speak at greater length with Grammaticus later, having noted his Psyker nature and wishing to discuss the options available for Psykers in the future. However, there would never be such a meeting due to the death of Grammaticus at another Terran location called Anatol Hive, though the cause of death has been forgotten. He was then found by or brought to the Eldari known as Slaudar. No, I don't know why there were Cabal or Eldari on Terra at this time, probably just Emperor monitoring. And the Autarch used his definitely not necromantic powers to resurrect the humans somehow. I did say those abilities did include a measure of control over life, so maybe this is less surprising than it sounds. Slaudar actually went one step further, using his abilities to transform Grammaticus into an artificial perpetual so that he would have a functional immortality, before employing the Psyker as an agent of the Cabal. What he would do for most of the Great Crusade is unknown, but when it was time for the Cabal to recruit the Alpha Legion, it was through the hands of John Grammaticus that they did it. Grammaticus infiltrated the Imperialis Auxilia regiment known as Geno 52 Chiliad, assuming the guises of the dead in order to remain hidden. But eventually he gained the attention of Alfarius, who interrogated him and learned of the Cabal. This allowed Alfarius to enter the eventual meetings with the Cabal leadership in a stronger position, but the knowledge of the prophesied heresy outcomes that he had also seen clearly had an effect on Grammaticus. As the heresy began, he contacted the human known as All-Person, later known and better known as Olanius Pius, showing him his visions of Horus slaying Sanguinius at the heresy's end in an attempt to get him to try and prevent Horus's victory. In his guilt for what he felt was his betrayal of the human race by sacrificing it per the Cabal's plan, Grammaticus attempted to commit suicide by venting himself out of an airlock, but his false perpetuity meant he would resurrect again before taking on a mission of his own to recover the artifact known as the Fulgurite. Aiding then betraying Salamander's captain Artellus Numian, then being saved by a demon hood-hunting word-bearer by none other than Erebus, Grammaticus was contacted after recovering the artifact by the Cabal once again. The organization offered their agents a way out, so long as he fulfilled one last mission. Take that Fulgurite and kill Vulcan, the Primarch of the Salamanders and another Perpetual. Not long afterward, Eldrad Ulthran also appeared before Grammaticus to give him another option. There was a chance that the Cabal's visions were wrong, that humanity's extinction wouldn't wipe out the Chaos Gods, and Grammaticus needed to stop betraying his race and instead defy the Cabal. Travelling to Macragge in order to complete the Cabal's mission, Grammaticus, along with Barthusa Narek and another, were able to interrupt the fight between a currently insane Vulcan and the Primarch of the Night Lords, Conrad Kurz. He got his chance to kill Vulcan, and he took it. Except he didn't. Grammaticus harnessed the power of the Fulgurite in a different way to restore Vulcan's sanity instead of killing him, giving up his own artificial perpetuity in the process. Given he failed his mission, when he came to, he was still in the service and possession of the Cabal. One of those accompanying him in the mission on Macragge had helped him recover and told him once again that the Cabal had one more mission. That sense, he wouldn't actually get the chance to carry it out, or even have the option to know what it was and accept or refuse. Eldrad Ulthran, again, yes, that name comes up a lot when we're discussing the Cabal, appeared through a portal into Grammaticus' illusionary prison alongside the aforementioned Barthusa Narek. The pair killed Grammaticus' jailer with possibly the same Fulgurite that had been used on Vulcan, before interrogating the now mortal Psyker about All-Person's whereabouts. Grammaticus replied that he did not know, perhaps unsurprisingly given his coma and the fact that Person had been forced to use warp compasses and dodged Cabal assassins ever since speaking to Grammaticus. I assume that Eldrad was asking as a way to ensure that Person would be present for the duel between Horus and the Emperor, as at least one version of events there has him sacrificing his life to protect the Emperor and convince him of Horus's corruption. Regardless, Ulthran and Narek took Grammaticus with them when they left the prison. Though the Farseer would go on to do many things, including wiping out the Cabal as we previously mentioned, John Grammaticus would never be seen again. What became of him is unknown. Perhaps his new mortality allowed him to commit suicide as he had tried before. Perhaps old age simply caught up with him, or any other of myriad possibilities. Unfortunately, his tale is the only one we really know about in detail when it comes to Cabal membership and operations. There are some known names here and there, usually those who handled Grammaticus or were slain by Eldrad, but it does give us some amount of a view into the mystery that the Cabal has frustratingly become. And there you have it, what little we know of the enigmatic Cabal. This organisation has sadly almost been entirely forgotten due to it not existing for over 10 millennia, but its power cannot be forgotten, and nor can its potential impact on all of galactic history. It still remains to be seen somewhat whether their prophecy concerning the fate of the galaxy will come to pass, but their attempts to make it happen in their preferred way have potentially marked everything that happened in the Horus Heresy, and potentially everything afterwards too. We will likely never see a Cabal-like organisation again with such cross-species collaboration, and I for one think that's a bit of a shame, especially if they end up ultimately being right. For now though, we must move on. Next time we'll be staying somewhat in the past, only going back a millennia or so this time. The individual we'll discuss is arguably the most important military figure in the Astra Militarum's recent history, one of the most successful conquerors in the entire Imperium who may have done even more than the Primarchs in different circumstances. Thank you for watching Tactica Imperialis, and I'll see you all again. Goodbye.